Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry. Uh-oh, the music's still playing. I was undoing my headphones while starting everything. This is a pop-up live. I was watching the Chad Daybell trial, and I have a moment to talk about some things, and so let's hop right in. Right now, I wanna say David Warwick. Yes. So it's Melanie Gibbs' husband. He's the one that is on the stand right now testifying, and he called Chad manipulative. And he's going to go into why he thinks this. I think the defense is probably going to ask him some questions again. Right before this today, I don't know if anyone else saw it. It seemed like he was a little confused with the last time that he had talked with the prosecution. Like, to me, there was a little confusion around that part. But let's hop right into his testimony and catch up with this a little bit. If y'all have questions or things that y'all would like for me to talk about, please let me know. I did look at the Visions of Glory book. Oh my gosh. Uh Hidden True Crime, and then also Mormon Stories podcast. Both of those covered that book, and that book is very, very concerning. And in this trial, they're talking about that a lot of this dark and light conversation came from Chad. But honestly, a lot of that was within this book, Visions of Glory. And that's where, because Melanie Gibb, it's my understanding that she was concerned about like the Mormon faith looking bad. And the prosecution is really putting a lot of this on Chad. And, like, to me, because even when Lori was arrested, Lori had that book, Visions of Glory, right beside her, and there are some concerning text around, like, light and dark and about children, like, evil things possessing children, like, there was a lot of concerning things in that book, in my opinion. So let's hop right into this. Please let me know if y'all have questions as we go, and let's do this.
Do you happen to recall anything else that you told to Detective Hermosillo in that interview about your feelings about Chad?
Yes,
What else do you recall?
that he was manipulative.
Can you explain what you meant to Detective Hermosillo when you used the word manipulative?
Like he gets people's confidence, and then he uses that confidence for his favor.
So I'm going to invite you to explain to the jury and reconcile how you can your statements that Chad was kind and humble and meek, but you also think he's manipulative.
Yeah, because all my interactions with Chad were kind, humble, and meek. It was that situation that happened much later. I just wasn't in that time frame, so that's when I saw a different Chad.
What was that different Chad? Describe that different Chad.
To call and tell somebody, literally tell them not to take the call with a very authoritative voice.
And so there's going to be some conversations that happened in yesterday's testimony. No, wait a minute. Was it Friday or Monday? Yes, in yesterday's testimony, where this Mr. Warwick, he's going to talk about how Chad wanted him to write a book with him, and he declined. Chad wanted him to be one of the called ones because he thought the 4400, like he thought that Chad, that he was the one that was going to lead these people, and he had all of these thoughts. And so I don't know which call he's talking about in this moment.
When you said authoritative voice, did you hear him on the phone?
No, I didn't. I just, after Melanie shared with me what the call had just happened.
He might be talking about a phone call. So I do want to talk about this idea of meek because I think Chad came off as humble, but I think it was like a false humility where he's saying these outlandish things and he's pretty much like starting this cult like behavior, this cult like thing, because Melanie's husband is going to talk about the fact that he hadn't heard some of her messages and talks and that he wasn't aware of some of her things that she said because the defense is going to say like was Melanie the one that was involved with some of these things. I do believe that Melanie was involved with the casting and I do think it came up in her testimony because they thought that with a casting when you cast out this evil spirit that the body would then die. And so like the defense tried to go into her with that. To me, yes, Sarah, I completely agree. I think this humble thing was a mask where he was attempting to come off in that way to hide some of that narcissism, in my opinion. I know people get mad when I say in my opinion, but I have to do that because as a psychologist, I am not his psychologist. And some of the things that have come out in this case to me, so Lori seemed to be a very like she wanted to be on display. I think that was some of her histrionic features that were kind of coming out. She was to me a very like overt narcissist and to me, Chad did some of these like underhanded and did some of those things. I've also said that I didn't think that his I wasn't sure how much he truly believed in all of this. And I've listened to some people that are part of the Mormon faith, some people that have studied this more deeply than I have. And there are people that do believe that Chad really believed all of this. I think that his and Lori's beliefs seem to conveniently line up with sex, unaliving people, and like them living this glorious life out in Hawaii with no children. And it seemed to conveniently line up that way. And they seem to conveniently, any obstacles in the way that they seem to use their religion or faith to justify their behavior. And even in Lori's sentencing statement, when she's like, I think she started with the scripture about like don't judge, like only judge lest you be judged or something like that. Like she tried to start out there that God knows her, that everything's fine. And so she never fully accepted responsibility. And yes, yes. All right, let's keep going with this.
You were asked about the reason behind your marriage with Melanie. You remember that question from the defense counsel?
Yes.
Why is it that you married Melanie?
Why is it?
Hmm.
Because she's a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she was very good with my Down syndrome boy and with all my children, and we're very compatible on many things.
Is there any question in your mind that the two of you have a loving relationship?
No,
And in fact, it was suggested that perhaps your marriage was to avoid testifying against each other. Do you recall that?
I'm going to object.
yes,
And I think I got the objection in time, Judge.
Yes, grounds.
But it's leading.
Judge, I'm just,
Overruled. You can answer.
well, you need,
Your Honor, could we ask Madam Reporter to repeat that?
Okay. So I love this question because I think anytime somebody's belief, I think they have to check it to see is this accurate. So I think anyone so I have friends that are very spiritual, very one particular friend that describes herself as a prophet, and um but the things that she says doesn't, like, she checks her things against, like, other leaders. Like, she's not rogue saying these things on her own unchecked. To me, Lori and Chad, they were doing these things on their own, because I think if they had went to their church and said, "I think God is telling us to, like, that we belong together, and despite him still being married, we were married in a past life, and now, like, we're destined to be together. We're just waiting for his wife to die in order to be," like, I think they would have faced resistance if they had talked about what they believed. And so I think that's where it can get dangerous if people don't check it. That when these beliefs go unchecked. So cult leaders normally feel like they're at the top and nobody else gives them guidance except God. And often the things that their God is telling them might be harmful, might be, "Oh, everybody has to give you all their money," that they get to do awful things to children. Like, that's sometimes what's coming down. I dug deeper into the Warren Jeffs, the FLDS, fundamental LDS. I dug more into Warren Jeffs' capture and the woman that testified against him, and just her story, and her talking about being involved in the raid down in Texas. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sometimes one of the most dangerous words somebody can say is "God said," because it's almost like if somebody says, "Oh, God told me." So I know people that, like, have went up to somebody and said, "God told me you're my spouse." And that person isn't supposed to check it. It's like, no, like, like, no, that's not that's not how this works. Like, and they don't want them to question it. They don't want them like, "Oh, God said it, now we're supposed to be together." It reminds me of the Twin Flames cult, or I think I can say, like, the Twin Flames universe thing that I talked about here a while back, where, like, these people would feel like they belong to somebody, and that it was then on them to, like, almost stalk the person. Like, they ended up engaging in really bad behaviors, and so I wonder if they lied, okay? Like, I'm really, really curious about this. Like, how did they do this? I wonder if the person that sealed them in the temple, I wonder if they didn't know that that they were married. And yes, I don't think we talk enough about spiritual abuse. I've worked with clients that heal from that are working through that, and it because it's similar to neglect, where it's not something that people can always see. And often people can be gaslit to think like, "Oh, you know, I don't know, like people can, their experience can be invalidated along the way, which is very, very troubling." All right, let's keep going.
I want to make sure that I did it correctly. If she'd be kind enough to do so.
You may.
Gonna fast forward a little bit. She's reading the question back.
And I'm going to repeat that for the record. The last question was, and in fact, it was suggested that perhaps your marriage was to avoid testifying against each other. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
Have you ever been charged with any type of criminal charge related to this case in any way?
No.
Your Honor, may I have permission to approach on one last topic?
Approach the court?
Yes, sir.
Sidebar?
If we may, yes.
Very well.
I'm gonna fast forward through this. That's the awesome thing about doing this a little early. If y'all watch Dr. G Explains, he went through some of Chad's nonverbals during some of his tests. You're like while he's listening to people testify, and then also an interview that Chad did in the past. I thought that video was interesting. There might be getting started again.
Mr. Warwick, you were asked some questions by the defense about this meeting that you had with Chad whenever it occurred that weekend. Do you recall those questions?
Yes,
And in fact, part of those conversations involved his relationship with Tammy, his wife.
yes.
Do you recall whether or not Mr. Daybell ever indicated to you the status of Tammy's health?
Yes,
What did he say?
he said that she was healthy.
And was that in relationship to let me withdraw that. Give us the context of how he explained to you that she was healthy, please.
I was asking him about his marriage, about what kind of wife and mother.
And it came up in the testimony yesterday, and I just want to recap it because Mr. Warwick was very like he kind of saw the closeness of Chad and Lori's relationship, and I think he was kind of questioning like, why are you like isn't Tammy a good wife? Like, why are you doing this to Tammy? And Chad's defense is that Tammy died of natural consequences, and that isn't what some of the evidence points to. Now, Chad probably has an expert that's going to say that they reviewed her medical record and that she died of natural causes, and it's going to be up to the jury to decide what to believe. I think that's likely what's going to happen.
And then he told me that she was going to be passing because was given a dream or a vision that she was going to be passing. And then I asked him about her health.
Okay. I love pausing. So anybody that wants to see this without the pauses, please know this is streaming. Okay. We are here for the interruptions. So I think Pryor was going after Melanie Gibb really, really hard. And I think part of it was to go to her credibility because she saw a lot. And some of her testimony was, to me, it was very damning for the defense. Even when they were going through some of the text messages, we didn't talk about Chad and Lori's text messages. Some of the text messages where like the defense was trying to say, "Oh, when Lori was threatening to leave if something didn't happen to Tammy, that Chad just kind of accepted it and was going along with it." Like the defense was trying to say that these messages actually looked good for Chad, and to me they looked horrible for to Chad. And the text messages were just it was a lot. And I do think that Pryor is putting on a really good defense. He's doing the best he can with the case that he has. I think it was very smart to throw Lori and Alex, to paint them as the devious ones, to paint them. And then Chad's just over here trying to look innocent, like, I didn't know. I didn't know what happened to the kids. Like, I don't know, like he's over here trying to act like the innocent one when, to me, I think he was the puppet master that was, and this is my opinion, I think he was the one orchestrating some of this because he's the one that gave people the dark rating. He was the one. And when Lori was coming back to him, like, ooh, what's, JJ is a zombie now, and they're going back and forth and saying all these things. I truly feel that um they knew. And when they're lying to the babysitter, and it wasn't Chad, it was just Lori, but still, when Lori's lying to the babysitter saying Tylee is away at college, and we believe that Tylee was most likely deceased at that point. And just all of this has been so, so, so troubling. Hey Karen, welcome, welcome. um oh yeah, Melanie also had a recorded phone call with Lori and Chad, um giggling away when she confronted them over the way they lied and said JJ was with her. Agreed. And to me, like, they were very careful about what they said and what they didn't say. And that part of Lori's statement during her sentencing, that still gives me ugh, ugh. All right. I'm going to keep going.
And he said she was healthy.
Thank you. The last couple of questions, Mr. Warwick, without intending to be facetious. Have any of your own personal visions or spiritual experiences ever led you to think that you personally have any kind of superpowers?
No,
Have they in any way caused you to feel like you have some prominent position in whatever you believe the last days events are?
no,
Have any of your visions or personal experiences ever revealed to you propriety or a way of dealing with people that you believe are possessed?
no.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wixom.
Judge, I think there's now some recross.
Pryor's going to
Briefly,
go
Mr.
in.
Pryor.
Let's all breathe. Y'all know Pryor. He's just the way he talks is just very but
So this discussion about Tammy's health, that's the same discussion that took place supposedly on the Saturday between times you were at the seminar for the Firm Foundation, right?
That'd be the best of my recollection, yes.
And Chad mentioned to you during that so-called Saturday visit that Tammy would be passing sometime in the future, right?
Yes,
And you were aware that Chad had made that revelation well before he ever met Lori Vallow.
and that's just weird. I would be very weirded out if my husband was going around saying that he knew I was going to die at an early age. And the fact that I guess Chad had been saying this for years, to me, it seemed like Chad felt stuck in his very normal, very mundane. Like, I think he felt, this is just my thoughts, seemed like he felt stuck in his marriage and in his relationship. He seemed like he was living a pretty, like, mundane, like, boring life. And because his writings were very, like, there was all of this imagination, all of this. His writings are odd. Uncivil Law during breaks, Uncivil Law reads some of Chad's books, and it is very, very odd. Very, very odd. And I think Lori was very intriguing. Lori was, I don't know, like, it was this other thing that he was drawn to, and I think that's, and he also needed a woman with money because he did not have money on his own. And and to me, Lori was easily manipulated. Now they kind of gave it back and forth. So to me, Chad didn't react to Lori's, like, because she tried to be like, I'm gonna leave you. And Chad was like, okay. And he called her his goddess. And so to me, they kind of fed one another's ego in a way that turned out to be a bit problematic. Understatement.
All right.
I heard that he had, but I never heard it before.
And what I'm having some difficulty with is that he's telling you that his wife is going to be passing sometime in the future, and yet he also tells you contradictory information suggesting that she's just healthy as can be, right?
I don't know if it's contradictory, but
Okay,
saying yes.
okay. Now, the prosecutor asked you, you've never been charged with a criminal charge, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah. But the day and the evening or the morning that JJ Vallow was murdered, you and your wife were at Lori Vallow's condominium that night, right?
yes.
Nothing else, Judge.
All right, that'll conclude testimony.
He gets
then
to
of
lead
Mr.
on
Warwick.
cross, I guess.
Is the
Not
state
a lawyer.
intending any recall of the witness?
Let him free him.
At this time, we would release Mr. Warwick from the state's perspective.
Mr. Pryor, would the defense have any intention to recall this witness?
Judge, he's under subpoena, and depending on what testimony comes forward in the future, we'll have to make that decision. So we'd like him to remain under subpoena at this point.
All right, Mr. Warwick, then you're still subject to the court's exclusionary order in this case. You may be recalled since you're under subpoena from the defense, so you're not permitted to watch any trial testimony or discuss your testimony with anyone else until that time, all right?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and step down, and then we'll have another witness called once the state's ready.
It's just, it's so sad. Yep.
State's next witness, please.
State would call Brand.
And narcissists view people as objects, not as like people. Like they view them as theirs. And it's this controlling thing where once that object is no longer giving me what I want and what I need, that object is no longer valuable. Like they can discard objects easily. I've seen people cut off, like stop talking to their children because their children wouldn't feed their ego, or. But I personally, thankfully, haven't worked with somebody that would go to this extreme because they would end up in jail. And I don't work in prisons. I work outpatient only.
Brandon Boudreaux.
He really is, and I think he might keep Chad from the death penalty. I really do think that. There might be enough reasonable doubt for the jury to not do the death penalty. I think Chad's gonna be found guilty. That's just my thought, but we'll see.
Or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth.
I like this judge. I have done some work in, but I don't work in prisons. I don't. You gotta be outpatient to. I have went into prisons to do evaluations on people, just general psych evals, not forensic evaluations.
All right, now the witness has been placed under oath. I'm just going to inquire. The court does have an exclusionary order. In fact, Mr. Boudreaux, have you observed any of the trial testimony in this case since it began?
I have not.
All right, have you talked to anybody else about the testimony they've given in trial?
I have not.
All right, Mr. Wood, then you can proceed with your direct examination.
Thank you. And Your Honor, before I do, I apologize. I should have asked for this from the court earlier. If I could be handed State's Exhibit 9.
Okay, we'll get that to you.
Gonna fast forward. Okay, there we go.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Brandon Boudreaux. Brandon. Boudreaux is Boudreaux.
Exactly.
Mr. Boudreaux, are you married?
I am.
Are you on a first or second marriage?
I'm in my second marriage.
I want to ask you a few questions about your first marriage. Who were you married to?
Melanie, she was Cope and then became Boudreaux.
And in your marriage with Melanie Boudreaux, did you have any children?
I did. I had 4.
And, what are their ages?
14, 10, 8, and 7.
And how long were you married to Melanie Boudreaux?
I was married to her for about 10 years.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that her maiden name was Cope.
It was, yes.
And are you aware of her current last name?
Pulowski.
What year did you marry Melanie?
2008.
And during that time, did you have occasion to meet her family?
Yes, I did.
I want to specifically ask about, did you meet the Cox family?
Yes, I did.
And who were they in relation to Melanie Boudreaux?
They would have been her birth mom's family, extended family.
And who in that family did you meet?
I met Janice and Barry Cox, Adam Cox, Summer Shiflett, Lori Vallow, and Alex Cox.
And so what was Lori Vallow's relation with Melanie Boudreaux?
She would have been Melanie's aunt.
And what was Alex Cox's relationship to her?
He would have been her uncle.
So they were your aunt and uncle-in-law?
Yeah.
Did you spend much time with Melanie's family?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together.
In what capacity would you spend time with them?
We spent holidays together. When they lived close to us, we probably see each other once a month. When they were more distant, we would travel to each other's houses and stay for a week or two at a time. And then we do trips together. We went to Disneyland a lot together.
And I asked that kind of broadly about her family. Did you have occasion to spend much time with Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow?
Yeah, that Lori and her kids and my kids, we would go to Disneyland a lot. We would hang out a lot. We did a lot of things together. It was just kind of part of our lives.
Okay. And I said Charles Vallow at that time. Was Lori Vallow married to Charles Vallow?
Yes.
And how well did you get to know Lori and Charles?
I would say pretty well, very well.
And you mentioned your family spent time together. You said you went to Disneyland?
Yeah.
And would you spend holidays together?
Yeah, often.
Would your children spend time with her children?
Yeah, my son Braxton was very good friends with JJ. They kind of bonded, and my daughter as well. Right.
And how old was Braxton as compared to JJ?
He's a couple years older.
And were you aware that JJ had some special needs?
Yeah. JJ had autism. Everybody who was around him, he was easy to tell. Early on, when he was younger, he was nonverbal for a while, and so he had like all this energy, but he didn't know how to use it. So you just had to be prepared for that. You set your house up for it when he'd come over to our house, or when you went to Lori and Charles. They spent a lot of time making sure that it was a safe place for him, and that everything was kind of handled for that. And then as he got older, he started learning how to talk, and he could say things. And similarly, he would rephrase things over and over. When he wanted to play with my son, he'd always say, go to Braxy, and he called my daughter Fridays instead of Bridie. So Braxy Fridays. But,
and so you said Braxton was a good playmate for JJ.
Yeah.
Did your family spend time with Tylee Ryan?
Yeah.
Tell me about your relationship with Tylee Ryan.
She's a good girl. She was, I knew her when she was little, and then all the way up into being a teenager. And so she was a normal teenager. She had her moments where she just wanted to sleep in late and no one to bug her, watch too much Netflix, and other times where she'd open up and she's sweet, and you got to know the real Tylee. So you got a little bit of both.
And did she interact with your children as well?
She did, yeah. Often would babysit them, or she was a little older than my kids, so she would naturally be kind of more of a, she had good motherly instincts, with them.
Did you ever observe Tylee with JJ?
Yeah, she was very protective of him.
And did you know Colby Ryan?
Yeah, I do.
Speaking of Tylee, did you yourself have any special sort of religious connection to Tylee Ryan?
I did. I baptized her.
Okay. And when you baptized her, what church was that in?
In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So to your knowledge, Tylee and her family were members of that church?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about.
And to me, them taking, because I think JJ had a service dog. Y'all correct me in the chat. I want to say it was a service dog. Them taking the dog was them putting what they wanted first and not thinking about what was best for JJ. And I don't think they thought about anyone else but themselves and just put themselves first. And I have 10 minutes left, so we will see how far we get with this testimony. I'm gonna try to skip ahead a little bit to see where we are. Let's skip ahead a little bit.
kind of viewed, like I said, it's maybe a once a month thing, or I mean, going regularly is healthy, and I think a good part of anybody who wants to find a rhythm for their religion. But going every day would maybe be something somebody did if they were retired and they just had nothing else to do.
But going to the temple is not your regular Sunday services.
No, we go to a regular Sunday service every Sunday at a church building.
Thank you to clarify that. And so this was, I think you said in the fall of 2018 that these changes started taking place.
Yes.
In addition to this daily temple attendance, what else changed in your wife's religious demeanor or attitude?
At that time she started going to these things that she was calling firesides, but weren't things that I would call a fireside.
Okay, so let's clarify that. In your church, if someone says fireside, what do you normally think of?
So inside of our faith, there's a leader of like a group of we call it a ward. So like a group of people who live in a certain geographic area.
All right, so I see good questions. So this is today's testimony. I am probably about 20, 30 minutes behind. So this is today's testimony. Some people, so there are allegations. I saw an interview with Lori's siblings, and there are some allegations about that there might have been some harm by a teacher when she was, because I think a teacher at her school ended up getting arrested for essaying other children. There are some questions about what happened in their family of origin. There's also some question of, was there some, like, was Lori and Alex relationship, was it more than brother sister? Like, it seemed like there were some allegations about inappropriate things between Lori and Alex. And they describe her as the beautiful one, the one that they thought would go off and marry a football player. She got married at like 18 years old, and they described that first husband as pretty, that there was some DV in that relationship. And then she got married again, and then like her life was just a lot of chaos and a lot of things going on. All right. And that it was weird to me because I think Chad talked about her family not being like good enough, but like they weren't religious enough for, because y'all remember those messages that Chad sent, that like he was gonna help undo like what her family didn't do, which was a bit odd. Um, Great question. Any research literature on inside insular? So it's normally higher. So normally, um any closed religion, any closed group, especially like, so when you think about like fundamentalist, or when you think of like ones that are secluded, there's typically more harm within the LDS faith. So within a lot of religions, especially against girls, they sometimes blame the girl of like, well, make sure that you don't tempt your brother. Like, make sure that you like, because I worked at a Christian sports camp, and the girls, we had to, our tank tops had to be four fingers. We had to wear one pieces, but the guys could walk around shirtless. And there was no regulation, no, like, it was always on the girls of like, you know be pure. And I think purity culture can do a lot of to and I think appropriate sex education to children, them knowing their appropriate parts, and them having that information, understanding consent and boundaries. Because sometimes within certain religions, they will say that like a wife can't say no to her husband, which is very, so like that is very harmful. I think that consent should always be enthusiastic, and we're seeing a rise in like adult women and like teenage or underage boys. And so I'm definitely watching that trend. I think it's becoming, I think it's being reported more, and it's probably something that's been happening for a long time. And sometimes some people used to wear that as like a badge of honor, like, oh, when I was 14, I whatever with in the like, and so the people used to kind of brag about that stuff without understanding that that was grooming and that was inappropriate. Stuff like that shouldn't happen. So I have 5 minutes left. Let me know if y'all have any last minute comments. I have the full link to this, so it's being streamed everywhere. I got it from Fox 9, and I have that link down in the description.
And so inside your ward, that leader's name is a bishop, and him or one of the other people, like the counselors in the leadership group, at times they might, besides going to church on Sunday, they might set up a meeting that they think might lift us up or encourage us spiritually. And it might be outside the normal times you go. And so they usually do them in the evenings, and they call them firesides. That's something that, you get together, it's under the direction of the church. And ideally it's uplifting. It's something that's going to bring you closer to, your commitments you made when you're baptized to try to follow the Savior.
Okay. And you said that Melanie Boudreaux, and there's multiple Melanies in this case, so I'm going to keep referring to her as Melanie Boudreaux, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so Melanie Boudreaux, she started going to what I believe you testified, what she called firesides, correct?
Correct.
And were these different than what you would normally call a fireside?
Yeah, so I kind of just described what I think of as a fireside, but she was just going to people's houses, and they were doing meetings that weren't under direction of anybody from the church. And oftentimes they were focused on things that aren't things we talk about normally in church. Some of them were just,
What kind of things?
Zombies.
I mean, I didn't go to them, so I can't say what
Portals.
exactly was talked about, but I can share what came back from them, which was what made me concerned. She came home one time and wanted to get like $10,000 worth of food storage all at once because she was really concerned about the end of the end of times coming, the world coming. And
Preppers.
it just didn't seem very practical to me, and then there was other focuses that she would come home with. She had a fascination with like Jesus Christ, and did he have a family, and why was James's name the beloved? A lot of early Christian, early church things. And so I would share perspective, but I was also, I kind of tried to share with her my perspective on. I served a mission for my church for a couple of years, and I saw some people who fell away from it, and I shared
That's
something
a lot.
that I had noticed in that process that those people got really focused on not the core of believing in finding faith in Jesus Christ, but they got focused on things that were really far away from that, and it led to them falling away from the core of their faith.
All right. And so, wow. Chad does. So the whole time he has been like very stiff, very looking ahead, minimal reactions, minimal facial expressions or anything like that. Dr. G explains went into like some of just trying to analyze some of Chad's behaviors and stuff like that. The camera is kind of far back, and so we can't see a lot of what's going on with him facially, but it reminded me of the Ferreter case, where what Timothy Ferreter, where he was military, he was just very just he was even more controlled and than I think even Chad is, but I think that was some of that being raised likely in the Marines. But Chad just seems to be controlling a lot and not letting much of anything leak out. Now nobody can control everything, and so sometimes you might see, some facial expression, but sometimes he'll like look down and write. Sometimes he seems pretty calm for the situation that he's in, but I think he's good at masking what's really going on with him. Those are just my thoughts. Thank y'all so much for being here. I will be going live at 1 o'clock talking about ADHD and what's the word? And something else. Oh, and money. I'll be talking about that. I'm meeting with a friend of mine. She has ADHD and she's a financial coach. And so we'll be doing that at 1 o'clock today in about an hour. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.